There are plenty of fighting games on the PS1, too many to name, but a common trend that most of them share is that they are home ports of arcade games. From Tekken, Street Fighter, Capcom vs SNK, Marvel vs Capcom, etc., many Japanese studios who were releasing fighting games in the mid to late 90s ported their titles to Sony's home console, what with the system having a massive install base and many passionate fans around the world. However, there were original fighting games made for the system that never released in arcades. But this video isn't about these games on screen. Instead, we're going to be talking about probably the weirdest fighting game ever to be released on the PlayStation 1. Developed by Yuke's, they're the guys who make the WWE series of games, and released in 1999, Evil Zone is an anime-inspired fighting game released exclusively for Sony's console, and it's still a true exclusive to this very day. I've always known about this game, but I never played it, but after a friend of mine told me to check it out and finally play it after all these years, I discovered that there's some really bizarre things to cover when discussing Evil Zone. Not much is known about the game's development, and as it never received a sequel, update, or port to another system, the game has largely been forgotten by fighting game fans online, so I've decided to leap into this weird, obscure fighting game for the first time to see what it's all about. One thing I've learned from my extensive research on the game is that it's about this evil being named Ihadurka, who, through the power of anime magic, can exist in all these different dimensions at once. The citizens of Iparesu, or Happy Island, have been able to contain her in the titular Evil Zone to stop her from being mean or something, so the inhabitants of the island decide to host a fighting tournament to see who's the strongest and most capable of destroying Ihadurka before she escapes the Evil Zone and starts being evil again. Look, it's not exactly Shakespeare, but yeah, it kinda gets the job done. Evil Zone has 10 playable characters, including Ihadurka, so if you don't count her, there are only 9. And they are Dainzaiva, Alti Lazel, Keiya Tenpuyin, Midori Himeno, Setsuna Saizuki, Gali Vanish Gregman, Lindwell Rainrix, Kakarine, and Errol Plaus, and if you finish the story mode with at least 3 characters, that's how you unlock Ihadurka. The characters are all parodies of anime and fighting game character stereotypes, and it was good fun trying to figure all of them out. Dainzaiva is modelled after Super Sentai heroes like Kamen Rider, Setsuna looks like an anime schoolgirl, Vanish looks like Guts from Berserk, etc., and I believe that your enjoyment of anime and its tropes and stereotypes will tie into how much you appreciate the characters in Evil Zone. Every character has a unique story mode that's presented like an anime, complete with an intentionally tacky narrator.
Special Inspector Danzibar was summoned to the strange world of Ipaseru to rescue his partner Yuri, who is stuck in the Evil Zone. Danzibar decides to battle with Ihadurka, who exists simultaneously in multiple dimensions. But someone wants to stop him. Who could it be? A new program starting next week will feature Danzibar, the ultimate hero. Episode 1, the power of the supreme ruler to destroy an evil. Zeruchaku Danzibar.
These segments were produced by Anime International Company, or AIC for short, and they've worked on series like Bubblegum Crisis and Persona 4 The Animation. Due to Evil Zone being very old, the low video and audio quality give these cinematics a kind of old school charm, and they honestly remind me of when I would watch anime as a kid on standard definition TV. Every fight in the story mode is treated as its own episode of a TV series, and I honestly love this idea. Having a fighting game story follow a Monster of the Week format until the very end where the hero fights the primary antagonist is simply brilliant, and I wish more fighting games out there did this for their arcade modes. One other thing I love about arcade mode, albeit something that wasn't intentionally added by the developers, is just how awkward some of these scenes can be without any background music. The characters' exaggerated idle animations, combined with the over-the-top voice acting, is reminiscent of a really low-budget, not even a B-movie, a C-movie, and it'll never fail to make me laugh.
Why are you here? You called me out for your own convenience, but didn't you come to stop me?
I'm not gonna give you any excuses. After all, I don't think it's right to make people of different worlds fight against Ihadurka.
You're upsetting my plan. So what are you going to do about it? I'm going to make you stay out of my way.
Each character's story plays out differently, and if you're looking for something serious, look, I hate to break it to you, but Evil Zone is not the game for you. If it wasn't obvious enough, the game is heavily inspired by anime from the 80s and 90s, and it wears its influences on its sleeve in that regard. However, if you're looking for a fun and silly fighting game to play, then Evil Zone has some truly brilliant dialogue for you to enjoy.
I'm telling you, Final Fantasy Reject, Vanilla Ice is the best rapper of all time. You fool! The knowledge that I, Ihaduka, have will shock and bewilder your mind. That there is a rapper even greater than your so-called Vanilla Ice. I do not believe you, evildoer. Who, possibly on God's green earth, can be even greater than Vanilla Ice? Da baby.
Okay, let's finally get into the gameplay. Evil Zone is a 3D fighting game, and as such, not only can you move forwards and backwards, but you can also sidestep left and right. 3D fighting games, at least the ones that I'm personally familiar with, use either 4 buttons or 3 buttons for their gameplay, but Evil Zone strips it back way more. The game only has 2 buttons, attack and guard. What this means is that every character more or less functions the same in terms of gameplay, but what makes a big difference is the range at which you attack. If I'm up close and I press the attack button, I can do a short combo, attempt to throw out a launcher, etc. But these moves won't come out if I'm away from my opponent. Instead, my character will throw out projectiles and attempt to do battle from a distance. There are also no motion inputs in this game whatsoever, and it reminds me a bit of Tekken in that regard, as most moves and combos in that game are done by moving the stick in a certain direction and pressing buttons in a certain order. So for example, inputting down an attack when up close in Evil Zone is the throw command, and with its combination of a direction and button, it could be compared to something like Armor King's DDT for example. The coolest part of Evil Zone, however, are the ultimate attacks. If you hold the attack button down, your character's energy bar will start to rise, and when it fills up completely, you can earn a gem. You can store up to 3 gems this way, and by inputting back twice and then the attack button when you have at least 1 gem, you can unleash your ultimate attack. These all look different, and they're obviously like the big supers we have nowadays in modern fighting games. You know, now that I mention it, Evil Zone's controls remind me of the dynamic controls found in Street Fighter 6 or the simple controls found in Marvel vs. Capcom 3. Maybe Evil Zone was the true precursor to the trend of modern fighting games having easier input methods. Evil Zone obviously wasn't meant to be taken seriously as a truly competitive fighting game with lots of depth and advanced tech to discover, so simplifying the controls so that anybody could play it is a smart move on the developer's part, I think. But just because everybody could play it doesn't mean everybody was happy with it, because when the game came out, it received mixed reviews from both Japanese and Western outlets. It currently has a 62% on game rankings and received scores as low as 4 out of 10 from outlets like IGN, ouch. I'm certainly not an expert in the world of anime, but I believe that due to the medium not being as popular or even mainstream in the West like it is nowadays, perhaps many people didn't quite understand the anime stereotypes and inspired cutscenes if they weren't interested in Japanese culture back in the day, and I'm sure weirdos who love motion inputs like myself would have been turned away by the overly simplistic nature of the game's fighting engine. On the bright side, GameSpot gave it a score that was actually pretty good, at least when you compare it to the scores other outlets gave it, so there did exist some Evil Zone enjoyers back in the good old days of 1999. After researching Evil Zone for this video, I found that there are many posts online of people who say that they really enjoyed the game for what it was, and that they would love a reboot or other type of update to the series, and honestly, I'm all for it. Admittedly, the game hasn't aged very well due to its simple mechanics and over-reliance on dated anime tropes, but I still enjoyed my time with the game. I'll put it this way, and look, if you're a foreigner and this doesn't make sense, I apologize, but if you're from Australia like me, you'll definitely understand. Evil Zone is like the video game equivalent of the infamous Midnight Macca's run. You know it's not the best, most well thought out thing for you to consume at that point in time? But boy oh boy, when you have that first taste, it makes you feel electric.